Hello and welcome to Scientifically Speaking about God's double helix energy flow. Today is a reply to SciManDan's critique of my video that I presented as debunking gravity and showing that electromagnetism and magnetism are what actually causes gravity. Now you have to realise that the video that I presented just told you about double helix energy and how it affected gravity. I showed a video of a magnet inducing ferrofluid in spheres, and many of you actually thought that was an animation. What's on screen here isn't an animation either, and neither were the balls of liquid. So this is the video reply to show my evidence for everything. Now, Dan said a lot of things. We're going to go through his video in a few minutes, but first of all, I'd like to say that Dan didn't seem to understand anything I said, and it's plainly clear that 90% of the people watching didn't understand what I was doing either. So the problem seems to be is you don't know what I was doing, and many of you think I don't have any evidence to back up what I say. So for the first few minutes of the video, I'm going to go through vortex to halo wave and back to vortex double helix energy flow. I'm going to take you through it so you can understand what it is that I'm actually talking about. Now, many seem to think that I just like poked my head out of the ground, said a few things, and said "lordy, lordy," when in fact I've been doing this for 5 years. And if you didn't think I had any actual proof, then that's pretty pig ignorant of you. On screen is magnets and what's known as normally it's called a ferrocell, and you won't find any videos like mine, like this that you're looking at, on the internet anywhere, because I'm the one that invented the procedure that you're looking at on screen so that it looks in 3 dimensions. That's 4 magnets on top of a ring magnet with another round magnet sat in the middle of the ring magnet. So I've been doing this. In fact, I stopped last year. I've been working with ferrofluid and magnets for quite some time, and have many videos proving everything I say, because we first have to get one thing out in the open. Everything you have been taught about science is fundamentally incorrect. The reason for this is the magnetic field that you have been taught about doesn't actually exist. So I'm going to go through my papers showing how the halo wave is constructed, because I showed the halo wave and everything else on the planet until I got to magnetism, and I realized that if I can show it with magnetism, which is what I say it is, an electromagnetism, then if I can show that it is on a magnet doing the same thing, then everything is fully correct and God hasn't lied and I'm not bonkers. There's plenty of proofs and predictions proven on my videos showing that all the time leading up to this, the things that I've said about how the Mars scour was made actually is true, how I say the Mars scour was made, and I'll be showing the evidence of that later on in the video. Now, what you're looking at on screen is what you have been taught. This is the fundamentals of all science, of how magnetic fields works. And if you look at any of the pictures, you will see that the direction of flow goes from north and round to south. There is no break. It's called a reciprocating magnetic field. It doesn't exist. This field doesn't exist. So whether it's a mistake or a lie, it doesn't matter. Today I'm going to show you that this magnetic field doesn't actually exist, and I'm going to show it to you with magnets and ferrofluid. So I was talking about mechanics and how things link together. So I'd like to ask, if it's a reciprocating magnetic field, how the picture A, which has a reciprocating field, how can any of that field attach to another pole in the picture B? How can it do that? How can it suddenly decide to break apart, so to speak. Now, NASA says there's a thing called magnetic reconnection. I'm going to show that that's a lie. But I'm saying there's no mechanics for anybody telling me how a north and south link themselves together. And then you have the magnetic field lines between two like poles. I'm going to show you that's rubbish too. So the picture B is incorrect and the picture C is incorrect. And I'm going to show it in a ferrocell. So the pictures I'm going to show you don't look like those. The B picture looks like a set of scrolls because magnetic fields, as I'm going to show you in my papers, is a halo wave that scrolls up into another halo wave because it's a wave. But what's coming out of a magnet is fingers. They do not reciprocate. Fingers come out of the north and fingers come out of the south. That's how they lock together north and south. So B and C pictures are wrong. Well, they're all wrong, but I'm now going to show you the difference. So as you can see, that is north to north or south to south. And it has two scrolls on it, two round scrolls. So the fields aren't pushing away from each other. They're actually rolled up. Now I have a certain technique that I've used to get this shot, which I have revealed on my videos, so you can go and review how to do this and see this magnetic field rather than the joke of the one you just saw on screen. But north to north gives two scrolls, but if we do south to south, south to north, they scroll up into a heart or an energy apple, depending on how you want to look at it. So how is a reciprocating field flicking its fingers up? Because as you can see, I'll take it away and I'll be doing this for a little while. You'll see the ends flop back down around the magnet because a north pole sends out fingers to the inertial line and the south pole sends out fingers to the inertial line, and there they scroll together. There isn't a torus on a magnet. There isn't, and I'm going to show that as well. But right now, that there is north to south connection. And as you can see, it doesn't look like any of them other pictures. And you won't find any pictures of how it is done. But they scroll up. Two scrolls, which I'll show you. There's the halo wave. And that is them locking together. Turn it round, and you have two scrolls bashing against each other. I've explained why this is happening in another video, but I'm showing you the observational proof that what you think magnets are doing are not doing it. And the outsides scroll up into those two fields. All right, I suppose you could go through the papers where I drew all this ages ago. Okay, so this is how all energy travels. So on the left-hand side, you have a vortex finger, and on the right, you have a double helix vortex halo wave. At the top is how they would look from above. We are now looking at the side with the big pictures, and it's just a general representation of how smoke radiation moves. So I mapped how smoke travelled because it travels in waves. What did I do then? Oh, basically I sat there for a year watching cigarette smoke and releasing halo wave energy pulses from it, because a cigarette is a radiation fire. Any fire that's given off heat and smoke is radiation. It's only when it has flames that it's suddenly not a radiation fire. So a cigarette is a radiation fire, and all radiation works the same way. Now everything I'm showing, I've already shown on video. This isn't like the first time I've popped all this out, but after Dan's little escapade there, I realize, I have to bust out the info, so you're going to have to sit here for quite some time. So, on the left is smoke travel. You can see it from a side view, and then from the face view. If you look at the bottom corner right, you'll see waves, because that's what smoke looks like when it's rising. It's a simple experiment, but I've mapped the travel of the smoke there. So what does that mean? Well, on the right is Tesla's fluid diode, and it is using the exact same principle of radiation travel, because of course smoke is radiation travel. And so Tesla's fluid diode, which doesn't permit backflow, is a great fluid diode, and it moves water upwards. Well, I've said energy moves upwards. Electricity and electromagnetism, they both run together, electricity and magnetism, as a double helix. And so why does Tesla's fluid valve stop backflow? Again, I've explained it on a video. Quick explanation. The Ouroboros field, that is the little rings, when that spins, it spins everything upwards. And so anything in the middle, any energy or water, is immediately given the energy back from the outside Ouroboros field into the center by rotation. And so suddenly one force becomes a force of 3. Oh, isn't that one of Tesla's numbers? I wonder what it all means when Tesla brings out his numbers. Well, I gave you your first answer. That Ouroboros field adds back 1 on the left, 1 on the right, and the 1 in the center. So you get a force of 3, which then moves it upwards, and it doesn't allow backflow because the outsides are still rotating. So you can sit there and call me crazy. I mapped the field of smoke, and it actually turned out to be Tesla's fluid diode, which I found ages ago. And the picture on the left is from 2015. So yeah, I spent a year mapping smoke travel. Okay, I'll explain the halo wave, which is all energy travel. Top 3 pictures starting on the left is the vortex to wave. This is where the left and right helixes cross each other's path and then form a double helix, just like you saw on Tesla's fluid diode. Middle picture is from above. This is where the halo wave spins around to the middle and then in a Fibonacci curve spins back into the center. The one from the bottom is going into the center, then it dives out of the side. Then it rolls around to the front, and then it rolls back into the middle, and it shoots upwards again. This is how energy travels. If it had enough energy, it would shoot out that Lorentz force, double helix vortex, if the energy was kept pulsing. There's a couple of things on here showing that atom orbital law is incorrect, and it's actually the distance between orbit 1 and orbit 2, which equals orbit 2. So yeah, you can go through that if you want. Okay, this video came out this morning from the slow-mo guys. Sorry, they've got it down as February 13th, 2019. What I just showed you, the Lorentz force ejection, happens when you keep adding power to the Ouroboros ring. And now the slow-mo guys are going to prove everything I say. And they needed a $10 million wave machine. Now, the wave machine is going to start pushing energy into the middle. And it's going to keep doing this, adding more energy until a Lorentz force ejection occurs, just like you saw on my drawing. So let's watch it.
Because that's where the spike wave is going to be. I think we're ready.
I think so.
Let's do it. Oh, you can see the movement.
Oh. Building up.
It's weird to just have perfect ripples.
Building up.
Oh, look at that.
So it's just ring after ring after ring, until finally there's a Lorentz force ejection.
Whoa. Whoa.
That's how atoms work when they throw out an electron. There's no such thing as an electron. It's formed by this. That then pushes out matter and appears as an electron. And then it disappears again. And another one is forced out by radioluminescence.
Pulling on space-time.
Now this is the halo wave on a magnet. Now I've explained this on other videos. This is just in a musical edition of All Energy Travel where I've just put all my papers online. But this is the halo wave that I just explained, and that's a full rendition of how the field inverts from one side to the other. We're not going to go through it now because it's on another video. So that's how a halo wave occurs. Now I'm going to show the halo wave in smoke, and you'll immediately understand it's how a nuclear bomb works. This is just one of my photographs of smoke travel, just to show you that it forms a double helix galaxy S, which we've all seen in space. So does that mean space is radiant energy, electromagnetic and electricity, which is forming all these galaxies? Well, this was formed by radiant energy. So at the bottom we have 2 leaders going in. They spin it into a wave, spin around into a halo wave, and create an Ouroboros sphere. And then because there's no more energy, it dissipates in double helix waves. So it's just simple smoke. So that's how all radiant energy travels when it hits an energy or matter barrier. It will travel in a vortex until it hits something. Here it's air pressure and electrical levels within the atmosphere, and that's why it rolls over. It's called a rollover halo wave to Ouroboros field, and it would go back to a vortex. But do you see how the outer rotation is pulling in the center, lifting it up? Same as Tesla's fluid diode. And again, double helix wave. It's very easy to see it. Just let me know if you can figure out an equation for that, okay? Because I can't. So we have galaxy rotation, which I showed you with the big S galaxy in smoke, which would be the vortex going up. And then it turns into a double helix Ouroboros field. Now an Ouroboros field is what's created by the halo wave. Ouroboros means the snake that eats itself, which is, well, yeah, it passes through itself and eats itself and becomes a double helix, which can be seen in the rotations in the field. And that's what I mean by an Ouroboros field. It's an interlinking double helix wave. Now this is a paper I did with all energy travel on it, and to show that it forms trumpets and fountains, and at the top right there you can see an Ouroboros field which looks like a blood cell, and that's what happens to your blood when energy runs through your bones. It blows through all them holes and it creates little blood cells by an Ouroboros field. The same as you saw with the smoke, the same that you know about with a nuclear bomb, the same that you just saw with Tesla's fluid diode. And on the screen is pretty much a bunch of how it moves. And strangely enough, the figure 1 on the top left is all energy travel, and then if you look in the center you'll see the Jewish menorah candle holder, and that would be viewing that all energy travel figure 1 picture and looking down it. So another picture showing radiation travel. Now all radiation is electrical, electromagnetic. Picture on the top left shows the double helix spinning clockwise. It crosses itself and is clockwise and counterclockwise. From above it would look like a galaxy S. As this rolls around, it turns into a rollover halo wave. This means it hit an electrical or matter barrier. And then if the pulse is separated, which is what I just showed in smoke, it becomes a halo, an Ouroboros field ring, as you can see there. So that's what I said was happening. And now I've shown it about 4 or 5 times. Here's another rendition of it, just in case anybody didn't understand the last one. I broke this down into as many steps as I could. This is just a quick picture of all energy travel. Alright, now that I've shown you all that, it's time to go through Dan's critique.
This is a physical constant. You don't become a physical constant unless you are a fundamental value existing as universal in nature and unchanging over time. It works in every equation it is placed in. You simply can't refute it.
You see, now Dan seems to think that I didn't know that. I said there's a number, there's a number. It doesn't mean anything to many people unless they're trying to work out gravity. But I did something a little bit more clever than that, Dan. Instead of just saying that number, which I can fully believe it works, and it works in every equation, let's try and find out why. Well, the magnetic inverse square law. This means the further you get away from the source of light, the intensity decreases as the square of the distance. The inverse square law applies to light, gravity, and electrostatic charge. It is often assumed that the strength of a magnetic field is also obeys the inverse square law, which it does. One of the first things I learned in my first go at college was that radiation energy diminishes inversely via the square of the distance, and I never forgot it. I've no idea why, until of course God came and showed me all this. So, does the inverse square law apply to gravity? The intensity of the influence at any given radius r is the source strength divided by the area of the sphere. Being strictly geometric in its origin, the inverse square law applies to diverse phenomena. Point sources of gravitational force, electric field, light, sound or radiation obey the inverse square law. So you have nothing, Dan. Right now, electromagnetism and gravity are joint contenders because a magnetic field uses an inverse square law. So your number doesn't mean anything, but this does. Your supposed gravity uses the inverse square law, which is exactly what magnetism is. So right now, your number means nothing. I went to see about, real science, where the equations would be, the real equations, the inverse square law equations. And here they are. And gravity uses an inverse square law. So right now, both candidates are the same.
Well, the moon doesn't do that. The moon seems to be pushing away from us, otherwise we'd pull together, right?
This is true, the moon is drifting away from us at a rate of 3.8 centimetres a year. But what our friend Scientific Lee doesn't realise is that this is because of gravity. The moon's gravity has an effect on the rotating Earth. Tides from the oceans cause drag and thus slow the Earth's spin rate by a tiny amount. The resulting loss of angular momentum is compensated for by the moon speeding up and thus moving further away.
And you have absolutely no evidence of that, Dan, except that silly little picture and you saying it from a book. But there's no actual experimental evidence that can actually prove it, so you got nothing again. Well, that might be quite believable if I didn't have two magnets that do the same thing. Well, I can bring in a moon and make it revolve around the planet Earth quite easily. The only reason it spins into the middle is due to the fact that there isn't a constant energy pulse, because our planet has a heartbeat, the sun has a heartbeat. You can just look that up. It was in the news yesterday. So you telling me about your theory, which cannot be proven, about the moon tugging on the Earth and tides and whatever it was that you just said, like it was fact. No, because on screen my magnetism makes things revolve around other things, and if they were both moving through space, it would be quite easy for it to have a bit of lag, like, oh look, it just flew off there and there. So yeah, magnetic fields like to hold things in. And so because I've shown physical proof and you showed a silly little 5-year-old's picture of a bulging Earth, you're 2-1 down, Dan. I've actually shown that magnets will spin around each other quite easily. You haven't shown anything but a 5-year-old's picture and an inverse square law, which I'm using.
How fast things are falling.
Well, what else do you want us to use? The acceleration rate due to gravity is precisely given by green bananas.
Well, I've just showed that it's an inverse square law, mate. So, right now, you're losing.
Now let's look at magnetism. Let's look at the explanation of magnetism.
Oh no, don't tell me he's one of these magnetic universe nuts.
No, I think it's an electric universe, because electricity through matter produces electromagnetism. You don't know how much works at all. And here we go now with suspicious observers telling us all about an electric universe, when SciManDan just said it doesn't happen.
Last but not least, and so very appropriate considering I'll deliver the 2019 Plasma Universe presentation to kick off the conference today, they have completely confirmed that the missing normal matter of the universe is not randomly scattered, but bound in the filaments of the cosmic web, flowing together, feeding down into galaxies as giant currents in space. And since these are either charged subatomic particles or heavily ionized gases, that makes them plasma, and plasma current has the magnetic fields and peripheral currents that make it far more meaningful than if it were scattered randomly. It's part of a great circuit, a system.
You should be feeling pretty stupid right now, Dan, because, you know, it's mainstream news that the universe is electric. Now, both of these articles are from 2012 about NASA going to look at the Van Allen belts and everything else. If you look at latest stories, you'll find out that they've actually been understanding and admitting that electromagnetism plays a massive role in science in space. You're a goat herder, Dan. They now realise that things happen. So yeah, up on the right there, I've got my X of double helix magnetism linking two magnets, which on this paper, you can freeze it and then go find it. Go to NASA's site and you will find that everything's said on here about these magnetic portals opening and closing, and they can't see them. Portals form via the process of magnetic reconnection, which doesn't happen, and they create an X. There's no such thing as magnetic reconnection, and I just showed that with this video. So there's fingers coming out of a magnet. So magnets don't kind of pull together and then snap off. They literally raise their arms and clap, and that energy is released. So me showing that magnets don't actually reciprocate and that they have fingers on, which we can see flicking up and pushing away or grabbing hold of the end of a magnet, depending on which one you show it. You'll see there's two scrolls there pushing away, and then the other side the scrolls interlock and fingers raise up. So the very fact that I've shown that all magnetic fields are incorrect. Where's my Nobel Prize, Dan? The one that you were talking about. This video's been out for a year. So where's my Nobel? Oh, I was correct that you're an indoctrinated parrot who only talks out of books and never makes an investigation or an experiment because he doesn't know how to. You're an embarrassment to science, pal, and everything I'm showing on screen deserves a Nobel Prize. In a minute, I'm going to show there's no torus on a magnet, which people seem to think there is, and no, there isn't. So this video is one of my videos, but this is another guy dealing with magnets who copied my idea of putting a hole in a ferrocell to see if there was a torus in the middle of a magnet. Now, the video isn't actually about that. That's just explaining the pine cone from the Vatican and why you would have a pine cone, which of course is because that's what's on a magnet, which is what I've shown. But no, Mike Palazzola does all kinds of crazy stuff with magnets, and here he is copying my design. And as you see, as he lowers the magnet in and out, the field disappears as he hits the inertial point of the magnet, which is the midline of the magnet. That's because there isn't a torus on a magnet. So where's my Nobel Prize, Dan? There's no torus on a magnet, and all magnetic law says there is. People said I should go look at Maxwell's examples. Why? Then I'd be like all the dim-witted people who've been learning indoctrinated trash. So my evidence has all been on screen.
And cannot move itself. Energy moves matter. Electricity binds matter, while electromagnetism inflates and rotates matter by double helix energy flow, which is electricity and electromagnetism.
The relationship between electricity and magnetism. He discovered that magnetic fields are produced by moving charges, current, and moving charges are affected by magnets. Stationary charges, on the other hand, do not produce magnetic fields and are not affected by magnets. Two wires with current flowing, when placed next to each other, may attract or repel like two magnets. It all has to do with moving charges.
Why you would actually pull that face after telling me that energy moves without matter. Here you've just told me that he discovered moving fields and moving charges and everything else. Energy and matter are separate, and energy moves matter. Thanks very much for pointing that out with attracted and repulsed. That is to do with electricity. Haha, you're pretty funny, Dan. Nice one.
Energy and matter are separate. Energy attracts matter, matter covers energy, energy moves matter. Matter is dead and cannot move itself. Energy moves matter. Electricity binds matter, while electromagnetism inflates and rotates matter by double helix energy flow, which is electricity and electromagnetism. And that is double helix energy theory, given to me by the God of the Bible in visions in 2014 for 3 weeks, day and night, didn't sleep for 9 days.
That was probably a bad bout of the flu.
You're a funny guy, Dan, for somebody who doesn't know jack about anything.
You mashed some words together there to make a theory. Please, I invite you to submit your theory to Nature magazine so it can be peer reviewed. I wouldn't hold your breath though.
Yeah, I suppose we could. I wonder if they'd be interested in how the Rose Galaxy formed itself. What do you reckon? Because that looks pretty good. Do you think they'd be interested in how double helix energy flow, a radiation flow, which is what's happening in space, do you reckon they'd be interested? Do you reckon it's worth a Nobel Prize for me to show that? The Rose Galaxy, and there I have it, a literal exact duplicate. Isn't that funny, Dan? Blimey, I've shown you up to be a right numpty.
So, electromagnetic radiation from space becomes electrical sonoluminescence in the core of our planet, which then becomes Earth's magnetism as it radiates the same energy back out of our planet, which is how all magnets work, as I have explained and drawn on previous videos.
For those who don't know, sonoluminescence is a mysterious phenomenon whereby sound is essentially turned into heat and light inside a bubble. And that is his explanation for Earth's magnetic field. Lee, I'm clinging on for dear life here, buddy.
No, I know you are. That's why I deliberately said it was sonoluminescence. That's to do with sound waves. In space, it's radiation, so this word's never been said before. And I didn't want to put it down because you'd just take the piss again. It's radioluminescence from radiation. So space radiation is hitting our planet, and in the planet it turns into electricity, and then as it forces its way back out of the planet, because there's always an incoming source of energy from the sun, it has to display itself as magnetism. So radiation in, electromagnetism, which then becomes electricity, and then on the way out it turns back into electromagnetism. I've explained all this on video, Dan. I really would have thought you'd have done some research before making such a pudding out of yourself. I forgive you though, because, you know, God showed me all this, so how would you know any different? Man, is everybody else enjoying this as much as me?
A sphere of matter. It creates spheres in liquids, or moves a sphere of matter.
What?
Which is every single atom and particle, because they all have an electromagnetic field.
No. Every atom does have the potential to be magnetic. No. Every atom does have the potential to be magnetic. No. Every atom does have the potential to be magnetic.
And so there is revealed Dan's lying shit-kicking ways. He just admitted that every atom has the potential to be magnetic. So anything he says after this is a false story that he's setting up, and then he's going to set fire to it. That's called a straw man. And it's not allowed. So he just admitted what it is. Oh yeah, and by the way, on screen, that's a double helix vortex tube created by steam. So yeah, I can show this in it. It's real loads of stuff, man.
No. Every atom does have the potential to be magnetic, but it depends entirely on the motion of the electrons.
The electrons are always moving, you Burke, so anything you say now is bullshit.
Their spin and orbital motions, for example. Atoms themselves can have slight charges, but then we're talking about ions.
Yes, and ions are only formed in an electrically charged gas. Dan, are you doing this on purpose to look stupid? So you threw out ions without explaining that it's an electrically charged gas. Plasma, right? What I just showed on suspicious observers. Oh, good grief, this is just too easy, Dan. So every single atom has a charge, has an electric field, and has an electromagnetic field. Do you realise what a total Burke you look? You look like a moron now, Dan, because you've just said that every single atom has an electromagnetic field. But here you are denying everything I've shown. It's pretty funny, mate.
Electromagnetism moves matter, as shown on video.
Now don't get me wrong here, electromagnetism is one of the 4 fundamental forces of nature, along with strong nuclear, weak nuclear, and gravity.
Which of course you can't show. You're 2-1 down right now, and all the evidence that I'm showing about how galaxies are formed and things like that. I'm sorry, Dan, but you are lacking behind.
The key difference is that electromagnetism only acts on things that have an electrical charge.
Which you just said is inside all atoms. Haha.
No. Every atom does have the potential to be magnetic.
But again, you've gone off the subject. I'm talking about electricity and electromagnetism. Electricity and magnetism. It's what it said in all my work, and here you are just trying to say it's magnetism, even though we're talking about electric charges creating magnetism. You're an embarrassment shill. I don't know what you are, but your moving tactics away from what I said is pretty vile.
Every atom does have the potential to be magnetic. Every atom does have the potential to be magnetic. Every atom does have the potential to be magnetic. Now the Earth's surface does have a slight negative charge, but the whole Earth itself has a charge of 0. Gravity acts on things that have mass, and wouldn't you know, the Earth has mass.
Well, you just admitted that all atoms have an electric charge and are capable of magnetism. So again, your words are just snowmen. And according to the charge neutrality principle, which of course is an equation, the electric charge of the whole Earth is 0. The reason why the surface of the Earth is negatively charged remains to be clarified. That's because it's a magnet trying to pull energy in and then push it back out again. It's how it works with the sun. It's probably because at the inner core of the Earth, the temperature and pressure is so high that the atoms are ionized. Oh, good grief. So probably more made up shit. So to sit there and say that the Earth electrical charge is 0 is bollocks, because we can measure the amount of Teslas in the air. We see lightning and everybody's moving. So we're moving through a charged electrical magnetic field that's spinning through space in a magnetic field of the sun. So it's constantly being charged and sending energy back into space. You don't seem to explain a lot of what you do, Dan.
This is how the whole universe works. You can deny it all you want. Let's say you give it a go. So I have explained how all matter is moved. So if gravity was actually electromagnetism separating all matter and pulling it down to Earth, I should be able to recreate it with the simple experiment to show the same observations, correct?
Round means no gravity, no teardrop.
That's just rain.
And so water reacts the same way when within an electromagnetic domain.
Lee, water has a net charge of 0. The Earth has a net charge of 0. Please tell me how electromagnetism would make this work.
Well, I say that the Earth's magnetic field is doing the same as it did with the ferrofluid. One thing I can tell you, because you don't know a lot about magnets, so if you freeze a magnet, it will separate the water into hydrogen and oxygen at either pole. And all those white lines on there are the bubbles that are being pulled along by double helix energy flow to either pole. So who's to say what the Earth's magnetic field is doing? You didn't even know that a magnet will split water into hydrogen and oxygen. Now, is that because of electricity or electromagnetism, mate? Do you even know? It's a simple experiment that was learned at school with electricity to separate. So, as I've said, a magnet is an electromagnetic object. Unless, of course, you can show me magnetism separating water into hydrogen and oxygen, because you were taught at school it was electricity. So, wonder which it is.
Which again has no explanation, merely words, not explanational mechanics.
Is that a joke? The process by which water moves up a plant is well understood and fully explained in any textbook or website you look at. It's something called cohesion tension theory. As water evaporates through the stomata of the leaves, it creates a negative pressure in the tissues of the xylem, which is a little tube that the water goes up. The negative pressure exerts a pulling force in the xylem and the water is drawn upward, aided by water's cohesive properties. That's just a basic explanation and not even difficult to accept.
Well, let's check it then. Adhesion. For example, water in a thin glass tube has a strong adhesive forces due to the hydrogen bonds that form between the water molecules and the oxygen atoms in the glass tube. Well, what's a hydrogen bond? A weak bond between two molecules resulting from an electrostatic attraction between a photon of one molecule and an electronegative atom in the other. Well, what's an electronegative atom? Electronegativity is a measure of the tendency of an atom to attract a bonding pair of electrons. The Pauling scale is most commonly used. Fluorine, the most electronegative element. So it's all to do with electricity and electrostatics. Again, nothing to do with gravity.
Adhesion of water to the walls of a vessel will cause an upward force on the liquid at the edges and result in a meniscus which turns upwards. The surface tension acts to hold the surface intact. Capillary reaction, magical, occurs when the adhesion, the glue, to the walls is stronger than the cohesive forces between the liquid molecules. So basically saying magical glue moves it upwards.
Well, no, otherwise you're denying the cohesive and adhesive properties of water.
Oh, you mean the electrostatic and electronegative electrical bonds. That's what you mean, right? And yeah, if you go to the Thunderbolts project or Suspicious Observers, you will see electricity moving water.
Aim. So conclusion, gravity is a word and a speed and not a force. Electromagnetism is shown to move matter in the exact same manner as Earth's gravity field. And so it can be concluded that gravity is electromagnetic field rotation induced when matter enters the system. And as we're spinning round space in a magnetic field, it's always going on.
Poor conclusion, and I'll tell you why. The wings of an aeroplane generate lift by the way that the air flows across them. They force the air downwards, which generates the lift able to fly. A bird's wing moves the air in almost the exact same way. However, it doesn't mean we can conclude that the best way to make our planes fly is to make the plane's wings flap.
See, and only you look stupid here, because I'm so glad you used that analogy. That crappy plane that you're talking about isn't how birds fly. So, no, it doesn't flap its wings. It has vortex jets behind it, which push it along, or propellers, which create a vortex, which pushes it along. Because birds, When they flap their wings, that's to gain altitude when they're forcing pressure into a vortex behind them. So actually, planes are a very, very bad imitation of flying. So to actually understand real flying, you would have to understand vortexes and how they can be used by angling the wings to create more lift and speed. So you don't actually know a lot about flying either, mate.
My name is Lee, and I follow the Christ who showed all this to me in visions in 2014 for 3 weeks, day and night. I have shown SciManDan that he knows zero about magnetic fields or gravity, but then he is just a parrot of indoctrination.
Isn't repeating what you've been shown by a religious figure in some magical vision also indoctrination?
No, that would be following the Pope. That's indoctrination. And for you to sit there and say that if a God actually came and speak to you, he would be indoctrinating you is ridiculous. I saw a lot of shit in my visions, that I can tell you. But what it all comes down to is that I was shown something, I'm now showing everybody else. And you've shown you're a part of indoctrination because you've sat here and said that every atom is able to be magnetic, and the magnetic field of reciprocation that you follow is incorrect. But here you and 2,000 other people called me a fucking knobhead. And yet, here I am, showing that you're a bit of a Burke who doesn't know anything about electromagnetic fields because he's an indoctrinated parrot who only repeats what he reads out of a book, mate. You haven't done any experimentation. I've got 400 videos like this. I've got 3 terabytes of information like this and revelations like this. So whatever you say doesn't matter. I've shown that your gravity, half of it's theory, it's based on an inverse square law which is magnetic, and I've shown loads and loads of proof of double helix energy going through things, creating a halo wave and coming out. I've shown the Rose Galaxy, shown double helix energy in steam. I've shown it in plasma with sun flares that I've taken off the web and then commented about. So there's a million things that you don't know about me, and calling me indoctrinated because I was shown all these things, again, makes you look like a pig. A dim-witted pig.
Just a thought. Bloody hell, if this guy was any more up his own arse, he'd be tickling his own tonsils. I've had just about enough of scientific Lee. He's about as scientific as Phuket Word, and that's saying something. If you want to check out a real scientist here on YouTube, I thoroughly recommend...
And as you can see, I'm not going to let him tell you where you should get your information from, because I've just shown that, I'm sorry, I got more actual physical evidence for electromagnetic gravity, electricity and magnetism than you do for your gravity. And your actual thing about gravity, your great big G and little g, is actually based on an inverse square law, which is also to do with light and magnetism. So you're outgunned, mate. Outgunned. I just slapped you. Hard.
The wings of an aeroplane generate lift by the way that the air flows across them. They force the air downwards, which generates the lift able to fly. A bird's wing moves the air in almost the exact same way. However, it doesn't mean we can conclude that the best way to make our planes fly is to make the plane's wings flap.
You see, I already knew that. And as I said previously, birds actually fly by forcing vortices of air between their wings. So you can keep your imitation plane the same way you can keep your imitation gravity. You've stolen half the work from magnetism inverse square laws and then applied it to a model. But your model of gravity is like your flying machine. Your plane doesn't mimic flight. It looks like a bird, but it doesn't fly like a bird because that's not how you fly. You see, the way to truly fly is by vortex manipulation and maneuver. So you can keep your plane and your fake gravity. I'll stick with my electromagnetic gravity, and then I'm gonna, I already did. I'm gonna go and fly my electromagnetic vortex maneuver machine, which of course is real flying. Goodbye, Dan. Oh, before I do go though, I did say I was going to show how the Mars scar was formed, and it was formed from a double helix blast from the planet. So here's a picture of a sunblast from the sun, and every single mark on that sun flare, which I can provide the video information, it's on another video, and if we place it over the Mars scar, you will see that every single mark, even the car mark on the right hand side of the actual Mars scar, there's a flare just above that. Isn't it funny that I found that? And do you want to know why? Because God showed me how energy travels. And so I waited to see what would come out of the sun. I must have waited 3 months. And then suddenly this came out and I placed it over the Mars scar. So there was an energetic burst from Mars to create that scar, because I've replicated it there from a sunburst from the sun. This is nothing to do with the sun. There's a big smash on the back of Mars and then a line that draws it to that. And that's where something smashed into the back of the planet. Energy went through the planet and around the planet and then ripped out the front in a vortex, which then turned into a halo wave and vortex Ouroboros ring, and then actually tried to get bigger. And oh look, it's the Mars scar. So anyway, my name is Lee, I follow the Christ, and I'm showing you all the things that he showed me. Thanks.